Boom. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is how a gas station cashier became a $1 billion CEO. That sounds interesting for you. Let's get this one started. Here we go.
Shut up and sit down.
Look, a business can give you everything you want in life. Prestige, wealth, freedom. It can also take everything away from you. This show is for those who are willing to take that risk. These are the real life stories of entrepreneurs. But before we start, I have one small favor to ask. Please leave a comment. It can be advice, critiques, tips, feedback, or share this with someone because your engagement is the most valuable and most powerful form of social currency. So thank you, and welcome to another episode of Business Bros.
All right, business bros, from escaping political turmoil to working overnight in a bulletproof gas station booth, she fought every obstacle life threw at her. From building a $1 billion empire to battling brain tumors, she redefines what it means to be a resilient leader. Please welcome to the show the one and only Miss Shirin Behzadi. We can get the party started. Welcome to the show, Shirin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. What a great introduction.
Well, you are the one who lived this amazing life so far. Give me a little bit of background. I kind of gave a little teaser in the intro, but how did you get started in this space? How do you go from being in a gas station as a cashier to being the CEO of such a big company?
So I was born and raised in Iran before revolution. So after the chaos of revolution happened and the government changed, I was still a child. And I realized that safety was gone. We dealt with lots of violence and all of that happened in Iran. I was arrested twice. I also lived through the war. So when it was time for me to graduate high school, my parents seemingly overnight told me that I was going to leave. I was the youngest of 5 children. It was a loving, close-knit family. And here I was at 17, packing everything I owned in my life in a small suitcase. And I had to discreetly say goodbye to everything and everyone I knew, including my father, my siblings, friends, and family. I was on my mom's passport, and we left to go to Istanbul, Turkey. It was the one place we thought we could go. So there, my mom found a place for me to stay, which was with a woman who had a room for 3 girls, and left me there. So at 17, I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't know anyone. I didn't speak the language. I had never been on my own. And I found myself in a foreign land trying to find my way through. Somehow, after a lot of confusion and I'm sure a lot of sadness, I found hope. I thought, well, maybe I can find my way out of here and to the United States. So I did whatever I could, learn from people, found a way to get my passport. All of that is in my book. I'm not going to belabor all of that, but eventually found through somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody, admission to a college into the United States. And before you knew it, I landed at LAX and I was excited, but I was like, well, now what? I still didn't have parents. I still didn't have a lot of money. I had to find my way through. So I started working at a gas station as a cashier. It was a bulletproof gas station in an area that wasn't very safe, obviously. That's why it was bulletproof. I had the worst shifts. And even then, I remember sitting at the gas station. It was one Christmas morning. I was by myself and everybody was home. Nobody was on the streets. I was feeling sorry for myself. I was sad. And it was like, how did I end up here? How unfortunate am I to be here? But you know, over time, little by little, I realized maybe I am fortunate because now I have a chance to build something. And a light bulb went on. From that point on, I decided, and I was telling people, someday I was going to run a big company.
You threw that out there and it became your reality, but I want to kind of take you back a little bit because I've read a lot of different stories from a lot of different entrepreneurs, and a lot of them always kind of say the same thing. You kind of have to burn the boats behind you in order to move forward. So you don't have a way to go back. But when they do it, oftentimes they do it as a choice. That they're going to burn their bridges, their boats behind them. They're going to move forward. In your case, however, those boats got burned without you wanting to burn them. You got forced out of where you were growing up. You got forced out of being away from your family. You got put into this situation where you had to make it work at 17 years old. I teach high school during the day, and I teach high school seniors, 17-year-old seniors. And let me tell you, the biggest problems that they deal with are things like my phone's not charged all the way. Where am I going to go out after school? Did I do my homework? Not dealing with some of the pressures that you had. Right. When you flip that switch and you decided, hey, one of these days I'm going to be a big CEO of a big company, like you flip the switch, but it doesn't automatically turn on knowledge and information and wisdom. No. What do you do as a 17-year-old, and I imagine you're a little bit older now because you're in college, right? So you're working at this gas station. You decide that you're going to make a change. What do you do?
That's a very good question. Yes, I didn't have a choice, and survival was at stake. What I would assume I could have done was to succumb, just say, this is my fate. I'm not going to do well. Life has dealt me some tough hands, and I'm just going to live with it. I'm not exactly sure why, but somehow I landed on hope. And hope was, there is a way out. Frankly, it wasn't necessarily a dream. It was a knowing. Like I decided I'm going to expect it. Like this was going to happen. So you may laugh at this, but I'm working at the gas station for minimum wage, and I'm going to college full time. And I decide I'm going to print business cards for myself, which sounds really strange, but it's like a tangible reminder that it's possible, that I can make it through. So what happened from that point on? I have a small, short memory to tell you. I had my calculus book because I went to school full time and I worked full time, so I had to study while I worked. A gentleman walked up to me and said, "What are you studying over there?" And I said, "Calculus." He said, "What are you going to do when you grow up?" I said, "I'm going to run a big company." I had by then decided, and he just laughed. He goes, "Whoa, good luck with that," because it's like you, this little girl in the corner of not the best areas in Los Angeles, working as a cashier at a gas station. Good luck with that. That's not very likely, right?
Mm-hmm.
But see, that's the whole point. To him, I was a cashier at a gas station, but to me, I was already a CEO.
Let me ask you. When you printed out those business cards, because you're changing your lifestyle, like the fact that you decided nothing's going to stop you other than quitting, so you are dead set on making this thing happen. You even print yourself business cards. What do they say when you don't have a company?
That's a good question. I think I just wrote my name, and I don't think I put a title. I didn't put CEO. I said something like advisor or something like that. So I didn't yet call it a CEO. But the idea that I even had a business, who's going to take my business card? There is a very interesting story about that in my book that comes all the way around in a very different personal way. But it was mostly kind of a way for me to encourage myself. Remember, I have had parents, but they weren't here. There were no cell phones then. It wasn't like I could reach out to them. I didn't see my dad, who was my idol, for 10 years. So I had to kind of find ways to parent myself, and that was one tangible way of doing it.
All right. So you are 17 years old. You decide you're going to be a CEO. That's the path that you're walking. How does it become a reality? What did you end up doing?
Everything I did from that point on was informed with that. So I ended up, of course, continuing with my college as I worked full time. And then I realized, okay, so if I want to run a big business, I need to understand the language of business. So I took on accounting. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to do accounting, I'm going to shoot for the stars. You have to understand, I was going to public school, and it wasn't really well known for accounting or business. But I thought, well, that's fine. I can aim for what was then the big 8 accounting firms. And I remember going to the career office, and the nice lady there that was helping me thought, I don't know, Shirin, they don't recruit from here, and I'm not sure. I don't want you to be disappointed. So know that the big 8 accounting firms is a lofty goal. That's when I landed on what I now have as my motto, is that you can hear people out, should hear people out, the good points of view that you need to hear, but you don't have to listen to them.
Mm.
Because oftentimes they tell you what they think based on their own limitations. So I did not listen to her. I did apply. I received an internship from EY, Ernst & Young. And because of that internship, which was, by the way, one of the only 8 positions open in the entire greater LA area, is huge. And from there, therefore, when I was graduating, I got offers from all the big 8. And I remember when I was in my first group meeting with all these wonderful people that had just started the same place, and they had all graduated from these really well-known schools, introducing themselves when we went around the table. And I chuckled. I just thought, wouldn't it be cute for me to tell them I was working at a gas station not too long ago? But then again, even there, I opted in for the most difficult projects. Give me the most challenging things because I wanted to learn. Because again, I said that whole idea I'm going to someday run a big company informed my decisions. I'm like, well, I need to know a lot. Mm-hmm. So I opted in for them. And in time, after a few years, I realized, okay, if I'm going to run a big company, then I need to understand operations. So with a very, very heavy heart, I left EY for one of the clients. Again, there I worked my butt off, and eventually the CFO position opened. And using the same principle, I went in and asked to be a CFO, even though people didn't think it was the right thing to do, meaning, scary. I got that. I was the CFO for a while, ended up selling that bank to another bank. It was a bank. And then I thought, I'm going to go out on my own, which was kind of a strange decision because I had been a CFO in my late 20s. I had been at EY for some time. So I had this resume now, and I had all this financial insecurity. You would think the next best thing for me to do was to go get another full-time job. And I'm like, no, I think I need to go out on my own. And so I did. I worked as today they call it a fractional CFO, but a CFO that's offsite. Mm-hmm. And from there, I met a company where I thought this is where I'm going to really test my entrepreneurial muscles, and stayed for 20 years.
So which company was that, and what enticed you about them as compared to many of the other clients you probably worked with at EY and at the other companies that you went to? Why that particular one? What was it about it, and why did it capture your heart?
It was very entrepreneurial, and it was still in its very early stages. So it had the opportunity to grow. Plus, I just felt like I bonded with them. And one thing that I've used throughout my career, especially since then, and even in later years as I grew the company, I was involved with growing companies and buying companies and all of that, is I used my gut. So isn't that interesting? I don't think your gut is a basic thing. It's an accumulation of the data you gather. I knew that I was going to be able to work with them. I knew that there was an opportunity for growth. That's why. But I want you to know, it wasn't like it was a given or a walk in the park, because when we first got together, for the next few years, we really weren't growing that much. So it was a scary time. And I did ask myself, why did you do this, Shirin? You have all your peers moving up the corporate ladder, moving up at accounting firms, and here you are kind of stagnant at a relatively small company, taking a risk with this. Is this really what you signed up for? And I just knew this is what I wanted to do, and I wanted to continue to pursue it. It took a few years, but we finally hit our stride.
And eventually, you ended up scaling it to nearly $1 billion in sales, which is phenomenal, by the way. What would you attribute, like, some of the key levers that you were able to pull at that company that gave you that kind of growth, that kind of scalability?
So the first few years, we were generally just trying to figure out how to expand our reach to people beyond ones that we had already brought on board. So, with a lot of entrepreneurial businesses, what I consider, you start with your close-knit family, friends, customers, and growing from there to going to people that you don't yet know is a big leap. So that took a few years to figure out. And once we figured it out, we started growing fast. From there, we took our time and asked, are we really just good at this, or Is it the product that we're good at, or is it franchising? Because we were in the world of franchising, and we decided that was perhaps franchising. We tested that, we piloted it, and we continued to grow until I set out to bring in private equity. We had a successful private equity transaction in 2015. A part and parcel of that transaction was that everybody wanted to basically sell and leave, because we had been in this business for so many years. It was tough to grow, and it had grown. But as a condition of that sale, private equity said, well, you can't just leave. Why don't you stay on, Shirin, and we let everybody else leave? So I did, which was very hard, because immediately after that transaction, now it's me as everybody. Like, I was
Yeah.
CFO, CIO, CEO, CMO, CO. Like, it was a lot to take. But the first step that I took was to really tackle redefining who we were, because I felt like we had grown organically for so long that it was time for us to revisit, who are we? Where do we want to go? Why is it that our customers and clients buy what we have to sell? Going through that exercise, as anti-intuitive as it may sound, resulted in the significant growth that we experienced, which is, the company was one value in 2015, and in a short 4 years, we better than doubled it. We grew our system-wide sales by 70% in a market that grew single digit. All of those are because of the principles that I use, which is the reason why I wrote the book. I didn't write the book to just tell stories. I wrote the book to create kind of a roadmap. It's more both inspirational and instructional. So I share some of the lessons learned. These are not my principles, they're principles that exist. The short version of it is really engaging people, making sure that all teams and people and customers are heard and aligned towards the same vision, and empowering everybody to be a part of this. I think making sure everybody solves for, on a daily basis, what needs to be solved for to move the company to its destination.
Now, there's one aspect of growing a company that you do internally that allows you to scale and grow, whether it's on the sales side, operations side, all these different things. But it's a whole other ball game to set yourself up to be acquired by another company. How did you prepare the company so that it could be acquired, especially having a successful acquisition through the private equity sales?
Yes, this is one thing I have, since I've stepped down. I've advised companies and entrepreneurs and been on their boards, and this is the one thing I'm very passionate about, and I recommend everybody to do. Build a company that's foundationally sound, first and foremost, that you believe has the opportunity for growth, that you can well define what it does and what it solves for. The rest will come as a result. So my point is, if you run a well-run organization that has a strong foundation and has a place to go to, there is growth opportunity for it, then at any point in time, if you want to, you can set it up for investments, for sales, for transactions, whatever it may be. But if you don't have a foundationally sound organization, you're going to be in hot water when you're asking for others to come in if you need them. So that's first and foremost. Make sure that you're in a really good place, and then you got to be really, really well documented and organized. Because if you think about it, if somebody else is coming in, they want to invest, they want to trust you, they've got to be able to kick the tires and understand whether or not what you present is true.
What would you say? Because at the end of the day, when you become a CEO or when you're running your own company, you're constantly putting out fires. Any problem that people can't handle comes to you, and you're the one who has to end up solving the problem. And you know, when you start hiring people, one of the biggest issues I think CEOs or solopreneurs go through is being able to allow other people to make mistakes, because your name's on the business. And so people are fearful of allowing people to make mistakes. But as a leader, there are times when you make mistakes too. What was probably one of the biggest mistakes you've made as a leader, and what did you learn, and what did you do differently as a result?
First of all, 100% you're right. If you think that, and this happens even in large organizations, believe it or not, if you think that you know better than everybody else, then you're not in the right seat. The job of a leader is to make sure that you bring in people that are in the right positions. So if they're not, then of course that's a problem. But they also have a plan, a strategic plan, a project, a way to contribute to the company that makes sense, as is consistent. Your job as a leader is to just making sure that people work collaboratively together, that the company moves in the right direction. In my case, I learned this the hard way, in the sense that in my eagerness in ensuring that everybody has room for growth, and that we understand people and where they fit, sometimes I gave people way too long a runway, in the sense that they were limping along. They weren't either aligned with the company or aligned with the company's core values, weren't really a good team player. And I tried to find ways to educate them, train them, put them in the right position. And this was even though some of my own executives encouraged me not to. So it took me a bit longer than it should have. And in hindsight, that is one thing that now I teach people, is to say, saying no is even more important than saying yes. What I mean is, if somebody's not the right fit, or if an opportunity is not a good fit, you've got to find your no sooner, because that benefits not only the organization, but also that individual. Because if they're not in the right place, what are you doing with them and their talents?
Yeah, it'll end up metastasizing and making bigger problems because they don't really want to be there, or they do want to be there, they're just not in the right seat, and it causes issues all the way around. You're 100%. And speaking of causing issues, life tends to throw a lot of curveballs your way. On top of being in the situation you were at 17 years old, putting yourself out there and making yourself into the CEO. You also went through like physical stuff, like a brain tumor. How did that surviving a brain tumor reshape like your perspective in business and leadership, maybe even in life?
Right. What a good question. My daughter jokingly says, "Mom, your life is a series of unfortunate events," because it was one thing after another. That was a very challenging health ordeal. It was a tumor that was lodged between my optic nerves that threatened 100% blindness, but also threatened my life. And there was no other way of removing it other than surgery that was done endonasally. And I thought, okay, I can face it. No, I'm going to survive. And 10 hours later, I woke up and we thought, I'm on the other side of it. I'm going to start finding my way to recovery. But of course, something had gone wrong. I had lost, within a week, I had lost all of my spinal fluid in my skull, which sudden death. That was something that I had to go back to emergency surgery, and doctors weren't sure if I would make it, because you're not supposed to not have spinal fluid in your skull, that you stop breathing spontaneously. They found the leak. We had another 5-hour surgery, and after that, everything went haywire. And of course, the system was out of control. Nobody can make your spinal fluid, so it was very touch and go for a long time. And after that I survived, thankfully. I realized that I had lost my balance. I had to learn how to walk. So I would take one step forward and 2 steps back around the coffee table in the family room. What all of that did. And of course, I couldn't really speak too well because my face was all broken. So I had to listen more. What happened was that I slowed down because I had to. I observed and I became an observer. Up until that point, I was surviving. I going fast, fast, fast. And here I was, forced to calm down and slow down, forced to take one step at a time. And so in hindsight, it wasn't a gift that I ever asked for, because it was very difficult, but a gift nevertheless. A gift that really, I would say, it's life before terminal illness and the life after. The life after has been so much more authentic, real, genuine. It awakened all the senses in me. And I made a lot of positive changes in my life that as a result, I truly believe this is as a result of that, I was able to step into the roles that I did, and I was able to grow the company the way I did. It was that experience. It fundamentally changed me for the better.
You become a little way more appreciative of almost everything in life, from the
Yes.
moment you wake up to, you know, when you accomplish something in the day, to when you make an impact in a customer's life or in a person's life in general. It everything changes. And let's face it, your journey is the definition of resilience. It's just how it works. And there are entrepreneurs out there that need to kind of build that muscle, that resilience muscle.
Mhm.
What advice would you give them when they feel like everything is falling apart, when they're struggling? Maybe they don't, you know, they don't have a brain tumor, but they're struggling in their day-to-day life. What advice would you give them to kind of help push them through, maybe so that they land on hope?
It is hard. It's let's just call it what it is. It's hard to build a company. It's hard to build a business. It's also just generally hard to get through life with challenges and adversities and all of that. It is. So let's acknowledge it. But then how do you move forward and move on? One, resilience. Somebody asked me a while ago, they're like, were you born resilient? I don't think so. I think resilience is one thing that you grow over time, you develop over time. So as you face smaller challenges and you go through them and find your way through them, grow from them, now you have muscles for the next bigger challenge. So resilience builds on itself. I encourage, therefore, people to entrepreneurs or people that are just dealing with life. When adversity shows up, when a hurdle shows up, when a challenge shows up, take a moment, of course, absorb that it's tough, and then ask yourself, what is this here to teach me? How can I find my way through it and grow through it? Find hope, that glimmer of hope that you may not even be able to envision, but know that it exists, and get your way through that adversity. I promise you, I believe adversity is a superpower. It's your superpower. If you find your way to grow through it, it makes you better. I've applied in business, I've applied in life. It is true. And know that when you come out of it on the other side, you'll be stronger, better for it. And that experience makes you more resilient for the next one to come. As you appreciate and deal with these different adversities, life becomes less difficult to deal with because it's like, oh, I've seen this before, I can get through it.
I love that. I heard somebody say one time that you need to picture yourself when you're struggling, that you're going through that montage in a movie, like when you watch like Rocky and he's like barely learning the training stuff and he's going through that. Like when you're at your lowest point, that's what you're going through right now. You're going through the training, you're building up and callousing up those muscles, and then you're gonna look back and and when you're a champion, you're gonna look back and all that is going to be just part and part of what you were doing. It's what built you, it's what made you, it's the foundation of who you are today. It may not feel like that at the moment, but it's what's shaping you into who you are. Shirin, you have the book right there, right behind you. I'll pop it up here on the screen, The Unexpected CEO. If people want to find out more about you, what you do, and how you can help them, how can they do that?
So the reason why I wrote this book really honestly wasn't my idea. It was my kids who were in their 20s at the time, sat me down and said, Mom, you've got to write your book. Because I had been very interested in helping others. I thought my life, all that I had been through, lessons that I learned, I wanted to share to impact others, to help them build and grow and accomplish and live the way they want. And so we thought the best way to reach more people is to write it. That's why I took 2 years. I sat in the corner of the family room and I wrote, and then sharing those principles and lessons learned to help others, live the life of their own vision. So one way to find me is, of course, just search for The Unexpected CEO. That's easy. Or else on my website, Shirin Behzadi. Good luck spelling that. Hopefully you have it in your show notes. ShirinBehzadi.com and all over social media. Some of what I do in addition to advising and helping others in keynotes is I do post a lot. I do talk about my principles. And of course, hopefully the book is helpful to others.
Perfect. All right, ladies and gents. And yes, the website is in the show notes. You can find it. I'm going to spell it out for you in case you're listening. It's ShirinBehzadi.com. Right. So Shirin, it's just her name, but in case you're wondering, it's Unexpected CEO, the Unexpected CEOs, where you can find them, and it's definitely in the show notes. So if you're driving, pull over safe and then click on it there. Shirin, thank you very much for coming on the show. Any final thoughts before we head out?
No, great. Thank you for having me. All I want to say is that I ended up becoming successful because I thought I could. And so I want to say, because you can.
The world is your oyster. When you were in kindergarten, they said you can become anything you want to be. Sometimes it takes us 17 years sitting behind a gas station, bulletproof with a calculus book to decide you want to do something different. Other times it might be a little bit different situation, but when you decide that you want to do something, go after it. And if you need a mentor, somebody who's already done it, Shirin is one of those people that can inspire you. She wrote a book. It's called The Unexpected CEO. You guys can find it on her website, ShirinBehzadi.com. It's in the show notes if you need help spelling that. But Shirin, thank you very much for coming on the program. Ladies and gentlemen, make a decision. Go out there and get it. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's over. Go home. Is your business in need of marketing? Try starting a podcast. But not just any podcast. Podcast like a pro. We can show you how to take your business from being invisible to becoming a brand people trust. Go to www.businessbros.biz to get started today.